It's August 24th, 1943. I'm on the docks of Townsville, Australia, watching the USS Helm, my home for the next 2 years, approaching the docks and thinking, what a beautiful ship. After reporting aboard to the officer of the deck, Lieutenant J.G. Miller, I met the captain, who took Miller and myself out to a very nice restaurant. The exterior fooled you because inside it was quite elegant, and never before had I dined where wine had been served. It quickly proved my small-town upbringing when the waiter poured a small portion to the captain and filled the glasses of mine and Miller's. It prompted me to ask the waiter, why is he getting left? Well, Miller gave me a nudge, and I watched the waiter go back and refill the captain's glass. Well, I've never forgotten that embarrassing moment. In our convoy was a hospital ship bringing nurses to Port Moresby. What we didn't know is that Universal Newsreel photographers were aboard to film the event. The amazing part of the story is that 60 years later I could locate it on the internet. After anchoring, me and 3 other helm officers requested a day's leave. An Army captain had told us of an amazing waterfalls 38 miles into the Owen Stanley Mountains, and he loaned us his Jeep to get there. This is how the road looked in 2003, the higher elevation. It was a dirt road then, and the lower parts of this was much more jungle-like. We'll soon reach the falls lookout point, and we'll stop, show you a picture of where we hiked to in 1943. We were so hot and sweaty in reaching the falls, we waded in the shallow water to the falls themselves and enjoyed one of the coolest showers of our lives. The Army captain had warned us to get out of there in a hurry if it started to rain. This video I found on the internet, this exactly shows why. And there's the pond we waded in. On our way back, we stopped at an Army camp. They had caught a 17-footer, very similar to this one. We were now called MacArthurs Navy. In the months before I arrived aboard the Helm, they had assisted MacArthur's landings. And now we had the follow-up job of resupplying these former hotspots. We were also in secret preparation for MacArthur's major Christmas present. That would be the landings at Cape Gloucester. In the meantime, look at the mileage the Helm was developing. And this doesn't include Australia. We'll show you that in a moment. About this time, MacArthur was making landings up the New Guinea coast and fulfilling his promise to return. We became part of a joint Aussie-USA task force that he dubbed MacArthurs Navy. And we covered many of his landings up and down the coast. Getting the surface radar would put my combat information center equal to the newest of all destroyers. It was vital. We could now spot all the ships around us and safely keep us in a proper position from each. And then a super surprise. Eleanor Roosevelt came aboard. She was on a worldwide goodwill trip visiting weary warriors in rest camps such as the one in McKay for tired pilots. She learned our ship was here and dropped by. Eleanor's best friend was the widow of Admiral Helm, for whom the ship was named. Mrs. Helm is to the left of Eleanor, swinging the champagne bottle. My normally shy radar man shocked the entire crew as he called out to Mrs. FDR as she was leaving. Eleanor, can you do us a favor? Everybody gasped, not Mrs. FDR. Diplomatically, she said, well, what can I do for you? Very boldly, he said, "Could you tell your husband we have been out here for over 2 years and we still have repairs from Pearl Harbor needed, and we need a rest?" Graciously, she said, "Well, I'll see what I can do." And here's the puzzle. 2 months later, we were on our way home. Did she or did she not play a part? We're now back to the war zone of New Guinea and to the helm's role in helping his keep his promise to return. It was my initiation into battle, bombarding a Japanese airfield in preparation for the bigger battle of Gloucester Bay. Our 7th Fleet Force, combining Australian and USA warships, gathered in Milne Bay for perhaps the most important landing in clearing his path for his return. We were so close to the shore, I remember very well the Seabees in one of their most crowning events in their history. They were dressed like Marines, they acted like Marines, and they shot like Marines in between their landing that involved unloading their heavy equipment for the building jobs ashore. With Cape Gloucester so successful, we were assigned to escort duty with troop carriers and cargo ships. That went on from January to February 1944. On February 19th in Milne Bay, the captain gathered the crew on the fantail. That's when the captain announced we were going home. And that's when one of the cooks jumped up and said, "Sir, can I throw the mutton overboard right now?" Well, when the captain agreed, they jumped up and yelled and screamed like they'd won the championship. Next morning, we joined a convoy that was escorting a troop ship to Guadalcanal, 400 miles of zigzagging. From there, it was clear sailing to Pearl Harbor, 3,500 miles away. Escorting her to Washington would delay us an extra day or two from seeing our loved ones. We dropped her off at Puget Sound, headed south, and later in the day was greeted by the most beautiful sight in the world. We arrived here in Mare Island on March 4, and we will remain there till May 5. During the 2 months of overhaul, I spent 2 weeks in the Midwest. Then Hazel and Mom joined me in San Francisco for the remainder of the time. There she is on May 5th, 1944, out of Mare Island, repaired, refitted, and ready to return again to action. This is your host, Walt Henderson, CIC officer for most of the war aboard the helm. It wasn't easy leaving our families and watching the Golden Gate disappear, but we had a job we started that needed to be finished. But before that, lots of hard work and little shore leave. With the Marshall Islands secured and obviously Saipan the next target, Japan had to stop it. Admiral Ozawa had that job, and if he failed, our B-29s could reach Tokyo. The result called to battle stations for the Battle of the Philippine Sea. In the Combat Information Center, our radios were turned on. We could hear the pilots. Tally-ho meant they encountered a Japanese plane. Splash meant they shot them down. When we started to hear splash after splash, we set up a tally board and started cheering, just like a football game. And as you can see, we had a whole lot to cheer about and eventually ran out of room in the tally board. And most of our guys came back, but a few did have a little trouble. And it was a long time before we knew the kind of a job they actually did. 240 planes shot down, 3 carriers, but it wasn't over yet. They hoped to really finish the job the next day. The next day, however, the fleet could not be located until late in the afternoon. Michener was thinking this might be his last chance to annihilate the Japanese fleet. By sending them off, they would come back completely unprepared, untrained for night landings. But he played the odds, and his pilots never let him down. 153 more planes were shot down, and the Japanese carrier force was forever finished. But right now, the pilots face 3 big problems returning to the ship. Number 1, fuel shortage. 2, darkness setting in. And 3, a night landing never made before. The biggest problem, fuel. The Japs were farther away than they thought. A few of the early birds ran out of fuel and had to ditch. Others with just enough fuel to land and get waved off for a bad approach also had to hit the water. The helm was close in to the Enterprise on their starboard side. I was on the flying bridge watching the return of the plane. I saw the rising sun icon of a plane trying to land. He was waved off and then disappeared completely. Darkness deepened, but Michener knew that by turning on lights, it would endanger the entire fleet. But his pilots came first. He gambled by ordering, fire star shells immediately, turn on all running lights and searchlights. The response was unbelievable. It reminded me of this back home 4th of July display, only 100 times bigger and brighter. The big difference, star shells illuminate much longer. The decision to turn on lights saved lives of over 200 pilots, but not necessarily their planes. 100 planes were lost, either by lack of fuel or poor landing under night conditions, and every splash pilot and crew were picked up by destroyers that night or the next morning. Well, the helm did its part, and by that time our motor whaleboat crews had become real pros. Retrieving was just a part of it. Now we had to return them to their home ship. And ice cream, by the way, on a small ship was a dream, never available. But carriers, a city within itself, had everything. Guess what they would send back as a reward? There it is, ice cream, enough for a day or 2. We couldn't wait till the next rescue. We only lost 123 compared to theirs. And 100 were due not to the Japanese, but to night landings. Well, we didn't have to wait too long for our favorite dessert as we rendezvoused with the Enterprise. Several weeks later, we picked up a lone fighter pilot in the morning, and a few hours later, our TBF pilot and crewman. Pulling up alongside of a carrier and then collecting a reward is an experience you'll never forget. With the Tusk Group on July 9th, we bombarded the Oroti Peninsula. Then on the 10th, we were patrolling to the north with the McCall. That's when we spotted a signal from ashore that leads to this story of George Tweed, Radio Man First Class, the last surviving American on Guam. I happened to be on the bridge when this flashing light in Morse code was translated by our signalman. The McCall, picking it up at the same time, notified the task force commander, and he immediately said, "Go pick him up." And this is Signalman First Class George Tweed, shortly after his first shave in 31 months. The hero. His intelligence information saved many lives in the landings. Then Hollywood cannot let a story like this go by. They enhanced his image with a movie called No Man is an Island. Starting in July of 1944, the Helm and Task Force 58 made many raids on both the Bonin and Volcanic Islands, which were far in advance of the bloody landings to be made in Iwo Jima a year and a half later. On September 1st, screening for the Franklin, the Enterprise, and a special note to the San Jacinto, where George Bush was a TBF pilot, we took part in 2 bombardments. First, Chichijima. Then Iwo Jima, 150 miles away, as carrier planes assisted us and struck Chichijima again, where George Bush was shot down, but survived and became our president.